Hey everyone, welcome to part 66 of my Pokemon game series in Unity. So in this video, we'll look at how to save the items in our inventory when we save the game. So if I go take this item, then I'll have 2 max potions in my inventory. So now if I save the game and restart the project and load, okay. So once I load, you can see that we still have 2 max potions in our inventory, okay. And also the pickup that we took is no longer here. So let's look at how to implement all this. Special thanks to all my Patreons for making this series possible. By becoming a Patreon, you can support me and get access to the complete project files of the series. The project files also contain some advanced features that are not covered on YouTube. So let's start the video. So first, let's fix an issue that we currently have. So let me show you the issue. So if we use a TM or a HM to teach a move to a Pokemon that already has 4 moves, then we'll get this move selection UI, but we won't be able to select any move from this move selection UI. Okay, so this is because of a change that we made to the dialog system in the previous video. So if we open the dialog manager script, in the previous video, we added the on show dialog and on close dialog event to the show dialog text function, right? So this is what changes the state of the game. So what's happening here is, in our case, when we show the move selection UI, we are not closing the dialog, right? The dialog is still open when we show the move selection UI. So what happens is, the on show dialog event will be called, which will change the state to dialog. But once the dialog finishes, the on close dialog event won't be invoked, right? Since we are not closing the dialog in this case, the close dialog function will not be called and this event will not be invoked. So if it's not invoked, then we won't change the state back to the previous state and the state will still be in dialog. So that is the reason why we are not able to select a move from the move selection UI. So we can easily fix this by moving this event out of this function and just putting it over here at the end. Okay, so now we will change the state back to the previous state even if the dialog is not closed, right? But this feels a bit weird. We are not closing the dialog, but we are still calling on close dialog event. So what I'll do is I'll just rename this event to something like on dialog finished. So that makes more sense, right? So now even if the dialog is not closed, the on dialog finished event will be invoked and it'll change the state back to the previous state. Okay, so now we should be able to select the move from the move selection UI. So let's go ahead and test this. Okay, all right. So here you can see we are able to select a move from the move selection UI. Okay, so that issue is fixed. So now let's start saving our items and pickups and all. So let's start by saving the state of the pickup. So right now when we save the game, we are not saving if the pickup is used or not. Okay, so let me show you. And by the way, to save the game, we'll have to run the gameplay scene. We can't just save the game if we are testing an individual scene. So make sure to run the gameplay scene if you want to test saving. So as I said, right now we are not saving the state of the pickup. So if I go take the pickup, okay, and if I save the game, and now if I restart the game and load, you can see that the pickup is still there even though we took it before saving the game. Okay, so while saving, we have to save the state of the pickup. So it's going to be easy since we already have a flexible saving system. So let's go ahead and use it on the pickup. So let me go back to the hometown scene, and here let me first change the pickup to a prefab. So I'll drag and drop it here to make it a prefab, and I'll go inside the prefab, and we have to mark the pickups as a savable item, right? So from inside the prefab, I'll add the savable entity script. Okay, so this will mark this object as a savable object. All right, so if you go back, the pickup that's in the scene should have a unique ID generated, which will be used for saving. All right, so next let's go to the pickup script, and here we need to implement the iSavable interface. All right, and when we implement this interface, we also have to implement the capture state and restore state functions. So let me just implement both functions. All right, and let me just place it together. Okay, so now in these functions, we need to specify what all states must be saved and restored, right? So in our case, the pickup only has a single state, that's this boolean that indicates whether the pickup is used or not, right? So we only have to save that. So in the capture state, I'll simply return the value of the used boolean. Okay, and then I'll restore it from the restore state function by converting the state parameter to a boolean, and I'll store it back to the used property. All right, so by the way, if you don't remember how the saving system works, you can go ahead and watch the video on saving system once again. Okay, so here after restoring the state, I'll check if the value of used is true. So if it's true, that means this pickup is already used, right? So in that case, we can simply disable it by disabling its sprite and its collider. Okay, so if it's used, then it won't be shown in the scene. All right, so let's go ahead and test if this is working correctly. So we have to make sure to run the gameplay scene. Okay, and let me go take the pickup and then save the game. All right, and now I'll restart the game and load it. All right, so now when we load, you can see that we don't have the pickup anymore. Okay, so it's getting saved correctly. So next, we need to do the same for the item giver. So we need to save whether the NPC has given us an item or not, right? So once the NPC has given us an item, we should save that state while saving the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So first I'll open the NPC prefab, and in here I'll add the savable entity script to mark this as a savable item, and then I'll open the item giver script, and here we just need to save the used boolean, right? So let me do the same thing that we did for pickups. I'll just implement the iSavable interface and then implement the capture state and restore state functions. Okay, so in capture state, we just have to return the value of used boolean, and we just have to restore it in the restore state function. Okay, so that's all we have to do. In this case, we don't have to disable anything. So let's go to Unity and test if this is saving correctly. All right, so let me go speak to the NPC. So he gave me a few Pokeballs. So now if I save the game and then restart it and load, and now if I speak to the NPC, you can see that he doesn't give me the item anymore, right? So the state of the item giver is being saved correctly. All right. So next, we need to save the items in our inventory when we save the game, right? So this is going to be pretty similar to how we saved our party. So let's go ahead and implement that. So the inventory is inside the player, right? So let me open the player prefab, and in here we have the inventory script attached. So the player is already marked as a savable object because it already has a savable entity script attached to it. So we attached it for saving the party of the player. So we don't have to attach it again for saving the inventory. Okay, so let's go to the inventory script and write the code to save the items in the inventory. So first I'll make the inventory implement the iSavable interface. All right, and then I'll implement both the capture state and restore state functions. So they'll be created over here. So now what all should we save in the inventory? So here in the inventory, we have three list of item slots, right? So we have to save these three lists. But should we save the entire item slot class? So if you look at the item slot class, it contains the item base and count, right? And if you go inside item base, it has lots of data, but we don't have to save all this data, right? We just have to save the name of the item, and since the name is unique for each item, we can get all the other details of the item from the name, right? So this is the same approach that we used for saving Pokemons and moves. We did not save the entire class. Instead, we only saved the name of the object, right? So while saving the inventory, we don't have to save the entire item slot class. We just have to save the name of the item and its count. Okay, so let's create a class for that called item save data. Okay, so this class will have a variable for the name of the item, and then it will have a variable for the count, right? These are the two things that we need to save. And by the way, I'm just making these variables public because this class will only be used for saving the data. It doesn't have any other purpose, right? So I'm just making it public to simplify things. So next we need to make this class serializable so that we can serialize and save it using our saving system. All right. So now we have the item save data class. So next we need functions to convert the item slot to item save data and the opposite, right? So first I'll create a function to convert the item slot to item save data. So I'll create a function called get save data, and it'll return item save data. So in this function, first we need to create an instance of the item save data class. All right. And while creating the instance, we need to assign the item name and count. So let me assign the name first. So we can get the name from item dot name, and we can directly get the count from this variable. Okay. So now we can simply return the instance of save data. All right. So I just have a typo over here. Let me change it to save data. So next we need a function to restore the item slot from the item save data, right? So we can actually use a constructor for that. So I'll create a constructor for the item slot, and it'll take item save data as the parameter. All right. And inside the constructor, we just need to restore the values of these two variables, right? So restoring the item is a bit tricky since we only have the name of the item in the save data. So we can't simply restore it like this, right? So we need a way to get a reference of the item from its name. So for that, what we can do is we can create a dictionary that contains all the items in our game, and the key of the dictionary should be the name of the item. Okay, so we have used the same approach to restore a move and Pokemon from its name. So let's look at how we implemented this for the move so that we can get some idea. So over here, you can see we have a constructor to create a move from the move save data. And here, to get the move from its name, we have this class called DB. All right. And if you look inside MoveDB, here we have a dictionary of all the moves in the game, and we can pass the name of the move and get a reference to that move, right? So if you don't remember how this was implemented, you can watch the video where we saved the party of the player. So that's where we implemented all this. So I'll put a link to that video in the cards. All right. So what we have to do is, just like we did for the move, we have to create a DB for the item, right? So here DB stands for database. So we have to create a database for the item just like this. So let's go to Unity, and in scripts, inside data, I'll create a script called itemdb. Okay, so this class doesn't have to be a mono behavior. And let me get rid of all the default code. Okay, so I'm not going to implement the itemdb from scratch because it's pretty much the same as the implementation of MoveDB and PokemonDB, right? So I'll just copy the implementation of MoveDB and make some changes to it. Okay, so let me just close all the scripts that we don't need. And let me open the MoveDB script. All right. So I'll copy the implementation of MoveDB and paste it inside the itemdb. So here we need to make lots of changes, right? So here instead of move base, it should be item base, and this should be called moves. And in here, we should say items instead of moves. So we have lots of changes to make, but let me show you a trick that you can use in these cases. So I'll hit Control and H, and it'll open up this small window, which we can use to replace certain text in our script. Okay, so let's say we want to replace all the move with item. So what we can do is in the search term, which is the first field, we can type move. So here you can see it's already highlighting all the areas where we have written move. And in the replace text, we can write item. Okay. So before you replace, make sure that you have match case turned on. So if match case is turned on, then it will only search for move with a capital M, right? If we turn it off, then it will also search for move with a small m. So in our case, we only want to replace move with the capital M. So make sure the match case is turned on. And then you can click this button over here to replace all the instances. Okay, so now all the instances of move with a capital M is replaced with item with capital I. So next we need to do the same for move with small m. So I'll change the search term to move with small m, and I want to replace this with item with small I, right? So I'll hit replace all again, and that should replace all the instances. All right. So this is a pretty handy tool when you want to copy paste and modify the code. It's much better than modifying all of it manually, right? But be careful, it's also pretty easy to make mistakes while using this tool. So now we have the itemdb script. So we can use this function to get a reference to the item from its name. All right. So here I'll call itemdb dot get item by name, and I'll pass the name as the parameter. Okay. So in this way we can easily restore the item. All right. So let me also restore the count from the saved data. So we can directly do that. All right. So now we have functions to get the saved data and restore it. So let's use these to save our item. So we have to save 3 list of items, right? So here in the capture state, we can't directly return the 3 list. We'll have to store those lists in some class. right? So here I'll create a new class called inventory save data. All right, and this class will contain three lists of item save data. So the first list will be for the recovery items. So I'll just call it items. And the second list will be for Pokeballs. And the third list will be for TMs. Okay. And let me just add the serializable attribute over here so that we can save this class. So now from the capture state function, we can create an instance of the inventory save data class. All right. And we can assign the three lists. So first I'll assign the items list. So the items are stored in the first list called slots, right? So slots is a list of item slot, and we need to convert it into item save data, right? So for that, we can call the get save data function for all the items in the item slot. Okay, so here for all the items, I'll call get save data function. All right, and we need to convert this into a list. So here we are just converting a list of item slot to a list of item save data. All right, so let's do this for the other two lists. So I'll assign it to the Pokeballs, and here I'll use Pokeball slots. All right, and finally let me just do the same for the TMs. Okay, so we have created an instance of inventory save data, so we just have to return it from the capture state function. Okay, so next in the restore state function, we have to do the opposite of what we did in the capture state function, right? So first we can get the save data by converting the state into inventory save data, and then we can restore all our slots. Okay, so first I'll restore the recovery item slots, so I can get the recovery items from save data.items, but we need to convert this from list of item save data to list of item slots, right? So we can do that by using this constructor of the item slot. Okay, so I'll say items.select, and I'll pass all the items to the item slot constructor to convert it into an item slot. Okay, so let me just use the toList function to convert this into a list. So we have restored the recovery item slots. So next let's do the same for the Pokeballs. So I'll change this to Pokeball slots, and here I'll use save data dot Pokeballs. Okay, and next let's do the same for the TMs. So let me change both of these to TM. Okay, so this will restore the items for us, and once we restore, we have to invoke the on updated event, right? Once we restore, there will be changes in the items, and we have to update that changes in the UI, right? So we have to invoke the onUpdated event. Okay, so we're done with the code for saving items in the inventory, but we have an error over here. So let me look at the error. Okay, so here I was using the default constructor of the item slot, but now since we have defined a constructor with a parameter, we have to make sure to create a default constructor that doesn't have any parameters. Okay, so now the error is gone. By the way, there is one thing that I missed. When we create the item DB, we have to make sure to call the init function when we initialize the game. Okay, so if we go to the game controller in the awake function, you can see that we are initializing all our DBs. So let's also initialize our item DB from here. All right. So we're done with the implementation for saving the inventory. So if you test this now, saving the items will work, but the restoring won't work. Okay. But we are restoring everything correctly. So it should work, right? So to explain why it won't work, let's look at how we are getting these slots based on its category. Okay. So this is a function that we are using to get the slots of a category. So here you can see we have another list called all slots, and in this list we are storing all our 3 slots. Okay, so the issue is when we change the value of a slots list like this, the change won't actually be reflected in the all slots list. Okay, so this list will still have the old slots. So to fix this, we can simply reassign the all slots list after we restore all the slots. Okay, but now you might be wondering, we had made other changes to the slots, right? So here we are removing a slot from the slots list, and here we are adding a new slots. So in these cases, we did not reinitialize the all slots list, right? So the reason for that is because when we make changes like adding a new element to the list or removing it, that change will be reflected in the all slots list. Okay, so this is a bit tricky concept to understand. So here, if I were to make a change like adding a new element to the slots list, then that change will be reflected in the all slots list. We don't have to reassign it. But in this case, we are not just making a simple change, we are completely reassigning the value of this list, right? We are just assigning a different list to this variable. So in that case, the changes won't be reflected in the all slots list. So if that sounds confusing to you, you should read more about value types and reference types in C Sharp. I'll put a link in the comments where you can learn more about it. Okay, for now, just understand that if we reassign the slots like this, then we'll also have to reassign it in the all slots list. Okay, so let me just get rid of this and let's go to Unity and test the game. So let me go pick up an item. Okay, so currently we have 2 max potions in our inventory, and we have 5 Pokeballs, right? So if I go speak to this NPC, he'll give me another 5 Pokeballs, and now we should have 10. Okay, so now if we save the game, these changes should be saved, right? So let me just restart the game and let me load the last save. Okay, so now if I check the bag, you can see that we have 2 max potions and 10 Pokeballs. So the item that was added to our inventory was saved successfully. So I'll stop the video here. If you think these videos are helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. That'll really help me out. So I'll see you in the next video.